Today we're going to cover everything you need to know about the pen tool, direct selection, and shapes because they work together. You can download the file and follow along. Let's jump into the action. Once you download the file, we're going to drag this into Photoshop. Here you can see on our canvas, we're going to start with the first basic level. We're going to grab the pen tool. You're going to use the shortcut P for pen tool. And here we have the icon for it. There are other versions of the tool that you can use, but we can also get to most of these by just using shortcut keys, even though they're not listed here. So for the first part, we're just going to draw this line, and we can do that by just clicking. And you'll notice the icon here is for creating a new shape or new path. Up at the top, ours is set to path. If we do that, it won't be a shape yet. It'll show up in our paths window. So what we're going to do is just automatically change that to shape on the top options bar here. We're going to go ahead and change the fill color to a blue. And actually, for the fill, we're going to do no fill. We're going to click the stroke. And for here, we're going to set that blue to be the stroke color. I don't know exactly the pixels yet, but let's just say 4 for maybe the pixels. Now I can come down here and click, and it'll create my new shape. And as you continue to click, we're just creating these corner points or straight points, and we have our first shape. Let's go ahead and increase our thickness. That looks pretty good. Maybe 35. Now we have some options we're going to go over now to jump in the fun. The line right here, you can click. That is our stroke options. So you have dotted line and the dots. We're going to leave it the line, but we have some options here. Number one is we can do the stroke alignment to be centered. And the caps, that would be the end and the beginning, because this is not a closed shape, it's an open shape. So we're going to change the caps to circular, so that'll round off those caps. And for the corners, you can see each one of these are corner points, right? So for where there is a corner, we could do a flat kind of chop off, or we could round them as well, and then it looks like it's squiggling around. Let's name this layer by double-clicking the text, and we'll call it line. We're going to press the space bar and move over to our next line. The second important piece of the pen tool is creating curved points. And here, if I click and drag, it's still continuing where I left off. I'm going to do Control-Z, press Escape, and when we escape out of the tool, you'll see we get that create a new shape. This is going to create a whole new layer, a new shape. So we can click and drag, and this handle here is what makes it a curve point. We can hold Shift to make it flat. And so I can hold down Shift still and click and hold. You can backspace, but if you backspace, it's going to deselect your shape. Notice the icon. So what I'm going to do is click back on the last point. This is the continue where you left off. And then I can come back over here, click and drag, hold Shift, let go. Click and drag, then hold Shift, let off the mouse. Then click and drag, hold Shift, let off the mouse, and then let off Shift. And then click and drag, and I could hold Shift again. You don't have to hold Shift, just a little shortcut there. So now we can call this our curved line. Now again, we'll want to make sure we click Escape. And for this, we could do this several different ways. So the first thing that I would do is we're just going to click to get these points. And I can use the space bar to kind of move this around, whatnot. So for the top ones, we're just going to Alt drag on the points. So you have to make sure you hold down Alt, you get that icon, and then drag. And we're going to do that on all of these top ones, and they don't have to be perfect. You just kind of mess with it. Then we go back to our beginning shape. So to select that point, we're going to press Control. So hold down Control and click, and then let off Control. Now with this point selected and still in the pen tool, you can see our handlebars and the two anchor dots on each side. So on either one of those, we're going to hold down Alt, and then we're going to break off the handlebar. So just go. Now you don't have to break off the other one, but it's already broken. So you can still Alt click on it if you want, or you can just hold down Control to control this handle, because that's our shortcut. And that can bother some people using the pen tool if you don't let off fast enough or early enough, or you're still holding it and you don't want to click a new shape and all that. What you can do is just switch to the direct selection arrow, A for arrow or Shift A, and we can simply select these points, but you won't be able to manipulate them without holding Alt. So here again, even with the arrow, the direct tool, depending on your version of Photoshop, you should be able to hold down Alt and get that icon. And if you don't, I had it and then it went away. We can switch to the pen tool, Control click, and then Alt break that off. So we'll do that for each one. We can Control click it and then Alt break off that, Control click it, Alt break off. So do that, and we'll name this Waves. Awesome. Great job. So now continuing forward for this shape here, I'm going to click Escape to escape out of that line. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on any one of these. I'm going to say click here. And I do need to click on these additional corners. Forgot the little square there. And we can hold Shift if we want to draw a straight line. But I already completed my shape, so it's done. Now, we'll get this icon here to close the shape, because currently it is open. You can see there's no stroke connecting this. So what I want to do is close this shape, and I'm going to grab the fill color and get a lighter blue for the inside. So here we'll name this Arrow. Now when I close the shape, now that it's closed, it actually already calculates we're going to create another new shape on a new layer. So we get that icon. So now we're going to do this with the curved points. And I'm going to start with the left side here, and we're going to click and drag up, and you can hold Shift to get that straight identifier. We'll click over here and drag. Now you'll notice that I did too much. So for right now, I'm just going to drag less. Same thing over here. I'll click and drag a little bit less, and click and drag, and then click to close the shape, because you see it fills it in, but it doesn't complete the whole shape unless if I click the last point. Now, to fix this, you can use shortcut keys, but it does get complicated for those that are new to using the pen tool. So the one thing that you can do is press A for the arrow tool, and behind that, the path and the direct, we want the direct selection through. The path is going to select the whole path of the shape, and the direct is just going to select one point at a time. Now, by default, they're all selected, so I can just drag over one point, and there it is. So now I can come in here and shrink the handles down. And I can control that curve going around there. So I can kind of make my circle and make adjustments as need be. And I don't have to worry about messing it up with the pen tool, because this is just controlling the points. And if I grab one handle and turn it, it turns the other handle as well, because these are our handlebars. Kind of like a bike. As you turn this, it turns and affects the curves. Maybe not the best analogy, but it does look like handle bike bars. All right, so now for our next part, we have where we're going to break the handles. So I'm going to switch back to the pen tool, P for pen tool. And here, because this is curved, I'm going to click and drag. And maybe just not a lot because I don't know what it looks like, right, as a beginner. So I'll click here. And then I will also maybe click and hold again. And then click it again. So here we have this really wonky shape, and we could switch, but I'm not going to switch tools, because what we're going to use is a shortcut called with Alt. And here, if we hover over the point here, we need to select it first, but you can also click and drag out, and it just reconverts it to a curved point. And still holding Alt, if I grab the handle on the outside of the handle, I'll get that icon where I can break the handle. So this one I might bring out. Let's go ahead and drag this one again, and then I'm going to drag this handle out. Now I don't have to hold it anymore. I can let off, and I could switch to the arrow tool and use the direct arrow. Now while I'm in the pen tool, if I'm not careful, you'll get the plus icon, and that just adds another point. The minus will minus a point. Now what I want to do is I can press the shortcut Control, and I can then control these anchors and the points. I can click on the point, and I can move the point, and I can bring this around. Now this is kind of hard to see the moon shape behind there. So I'm going to come over to my layers and reduce the opacity to say 50%. Now I can kind of see, and I can make adjustments to this as necessary. Doesn't have to be perfect. The idea here is how to break the handles and practice controlling the shape. At any point in time, you can easily start over, right, by recreating this. We can escape out of this. If we press escape, it will deselect, and we can name this moon. Now, if I hold down spacebar and move over to the next one, when you're making your own shapes, something like this leaf, it can sometimes be easier just to click the points that you need. So we know we have a point where the stem kind of is. We know we may need a point over here with the curve, which you could curve it now, or you can just leave it a straight point. Either way, that's fine. And so I'll just kind of click, click, and click. And then I can come in here and I can Alt drag this and start getting that shape. So here I'm going to, in this case where this curve is, it would look weird if it's sharp. So I don't want to break it off. I'm going to switch to my arrow. I'm going to pull this up and pull this up. But what I'm going to do instead, let's also decrease the opacity here. I'm going to take this bottom point and I'm going to Alt with the pen tool, Alt. And if you drag the opposite, right, you'll get it tied up. So you just go the opposite way. And I'm going to do that for maybe the top. No, the top is probably good. So we just need the bottom to Alt drag that out. Then we can Alt and we can break off these points here like little antennas. And this curve here is partially controlled by one handle on one point, and the other part of the curve is controlled by the other handle. So here I can control this side. So I can manipulate them evenly, or I can also just manipulate one to try to get the shape. So it just kind of depends. So this one I can pull down a little bit more. You may have to if you click off, just click back on to select the path, get that point, and then continue manipulating the points. There we go. And that's some good practice. Now for our bush. And so that's just one way of doing it, where you can edit after you make the basic shape, and you want to have the least points as possible, and that allows you to control your shapes better. Good tip there. Now, we can also edit while we're making the shape. So I'm going to start P for pen tool, escape if you need to. And I'm going to click 1, click 2. To get that straight line, you can hold Shift. You can always backspace, but what I like to do is I'll just Control Z and then click. If you do backspace, you have to re-click the starting point because we only want to have one layer for this shape. And then for number 3, I'm going to click and drag up, just getting close to the shape. And then here you can see this one, I'm first going to click and drag down like so. That's what I do first. Then I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm going to break off this handle because I know that the curve is going to go up, right? So in this case, I bring that here. Boop. Then I can click 5 and drag down. Roughly something like that. And again, I can hold Alt and then break off the bottom handle. And if I want to fix this curve here, I just hold Control instead to control the handle. And I would just click the handle I want to control. And so, I could mess with 4 or 5's curve here. Either one of them kind of gets that curve. I'm going to go back to the pen tool here again, and I can automatically come to 6 and drag down. And then we need to connect our shape. So I can click on point 7 or 1 and connect it together. Here we'll call this bush. And for another trick with the pen tool, we're going to switch over to shapes. The shortcut for shapes is U. And you can see here, we have a couple different options. Typically, you'll see rectangle, ellipse, polygon, line, and custom shape. I'm just going to select the rectangle, and I'm going to drag out this rectangle right here on the dotted lines. Now, when I do so, on my version of Photoshop currently, it pulls up the properties window. If you don't have that, you would go up to Window and then Properties. So when I first create a default shape, you're going to get specific options right here in the properties. I can change the color, the stroke width, stroke options. I can also then additionally change the stroke alignment and properties here. But then we get this rounded corners area, and they're all linked. So here I can round the corners, say somewhere around 130. That's good enough, doesn't need to be exact. And I can minimize the properties window here. Now what I'm going to do is switch to the pen tool, P. I can hold down Control and click the shape. So now it knows not only am I on this layer, but I'm selecting this shape. Then I can hold down the Alt and I can Alt-click. Not Alt-drag, Alt-click. And if I Alt-click each one of these points, whoops, if you accidentally create a point, Control-Z, Alt-click, and I will make each one of these a straight point. So we get that kind of stop sign feel, but getting these rough edges. Next up, commonly used is having multiple shapes. I'm going to switch to the shape tool, U, yoop, yeep, yape, yoop. Pressing U, and then getting my shape. I'm going to drag out a box here. And I'm going to call this box 1. And I'm going to then draw a smaller box. And I'm going to go ahead and make this fill color to be the dark blue for this one. And I'm going to name this box 2. So we have 2 boxes. Now, we're going to merge these 2 together. And it's important to note that whichever one is on top, those properties are going to be handed down to the other layers. So right now, if I merge box 2 with box 1, it's going to be one dark blue shape, 2 shapes on one layer. So I'm going to switch this and do box 1 on top, box 2 on bottom. So now I can select these 2 layers, Control or Shift clicking, and I can right click and do Merge Shapes, or the shortcut is Control E. We're going to urge them together. Now you see our layer is now called box 1, and it puts them all in one shape. But we can still edit this with the pen tool or the arrow tool, the direct tool. So I'm going to press A for the direct selection, and you can see I can click on this one and see that this shape was my box 2. Now I'm going to do either Shift A or change this to the path selection, because I want to not select box 1, but we want to make sure we're on box 2, and it'll fill the corner squares in with that blue fill-in color for the anchor points. And with that selected, up here on the toolbar, we can come up here to our operations. Now in this case, what I want to do is subtract. And we're trying to subtract this box from this shape. But it's not doing it right. This looks weird, right? So if we come up to our next one over, this is the alignment. And then over next to that, we have where we can bring the shape to front. So this is whatever shape we have selected. It's kind of like layers, but it has to do with having multiple shapes on one layer. So the one that we want to subtract, we need to bring to the front. So when subtracting, rule number 1, the shape needs to be all the way to the front. So when we do that, it subtracts it out. We can click off, and you can see we get this cool shape where we've subtracted out the bottom. And what's even cooler, we can come back and I could pull this up even more, and you see that this shape is now movable. I can change this. And still be able to get the look or feel that I want when I'm using this tool. Now for the test, you're going to do that same thing for the eagle. You should only use 2 shapes on one layer, call it the eagle layer, and you'll do 2 shapes, one to subtract the eyeball, and then the other shape that goes around the eagle, and only use a total of 23 points. So the eyeball is 2 points, whereas the eagle is going to be 21 points. I hope that helped you on your journey. God bless and see you next time.